1 Samuel. Take your Bibles if you got them. 1 Samuel chapter 14. King Saul is king over Israel at the time. And Israel, it's a nation, but this is their first king. They haven't really blossomed into a world power or anything like that yet. This is Israel, and they're kind of like, I don't know, they're almost like a third world country. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. Everybody there, 1 Samuel chapter 14. Look verse in chapter 13, and let's begin reading in verse 19. Saul is at war with the Philistines, but this is what's going on, because you always have this fighting between the Arabs, which are the Philistines, and the Israelites. Now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords or spears. So in other words, in all of Israel, there was no metal smith. They didn't have anybody to make them metal swords and spears. Now watch this. But all the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen every man his shear and his coulter and his axe and his mattocks. And these were not weapons, these were tools, right? They were farmers. These weren't weapons. They weren't sharpening weapons. They were going down there to sharpen their tools. Yet they had a file for the mattocks and for the coulters and for the forks and for the axes to sharpen the goads. So it came to pass in the day of battle that there was what, everybody? Neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan. But with Saul and with Jonathan his son was there found. So in Saul's whole army, only two people had swords. Saul and Jonathan. Now watch what happens. And the garrison of the Philistines went out to the passage of Michmash. Verse 14, chapter 14. Now it came to pass upon a day that Jonathan the son of Saul said unto the young man that bare his armor, come and let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side. But he told not his father. And Saul tarried in the uttermost parts of Gibeah under a palm-bearing tree which is in Migron. And the people that were there with him were about 600 men. And Ahiah, the son of that guy and that guy's brother, the son of Phinehas, and the son of Eli, the Lord's priest, and Shiloh wearing the ephod, and all the people knew not that Jonathan was gone. Shorten this story up. There are over 30,000, I think the number is, you see it in chapter 13, Philistines that have come out against King Saul and his huge army of 600. Among only two of them had real swords. Now watch Jonathan. Jonathan said he goes and he grabs his armor bearer who has a shield, basically, right? He didn't have a sword. And he says this. And he goes up and he says, let's go, Jonathan, verse 6. And Jonathan said to the young man that bare his armor, come and let us go over unto the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us. For there is no restraint to the Lord to save by many or by few. I'm going to preach this one today. Hey. Listen to Jonathan now. Jonathan is Saul's young son. The young son says, let's go up to the garrison, where the garrison had housed over 30,000 chariots, if I remember correctly. You can read and find the exact number. And he says, for we don't know if God is going to be able to save us by many. What was the many he was talking about? He was talking about the 600 versus the 30,000. He was saying that the 600 was many. See, only inexperienced youth would say something as dumb as that. Here is Jonathan now. If it had been Saul, you know what Saul would have said? Saul, the mighty warrior who had been fighting Philistines all of his life, essentially. he was experienced, he was an expert in the art of war, he would have said that this is impossible, even because where was he? Sitting at home underneath the pomegranate tree. But here is Jonathan saying, Jonathan, who grew up in Sabbath school, hearing how God had taken the children of Israel, a bunch of slaves out of Egypt, taking them to a big sea, and he knew that the stories that he learned in Sabbath school and in Pathfinders, he knew that all Moses did was take a stick and hold it out over a sea. And how the water parted, and how 10 million people crossed on dry land. And then when the Hebrews saw, when the Egyptian soldiers came behind them, all they did was take that stick and stretch it out again. He said, we didn't have to fight then. But the God that we serve, you know, some people, this is a little side note, some people say that when you go to that place today where the children of Israel crossed the Red Sea, they say that, there was no miracle that happened here. Because when you go to that spot where some people say it is today, it is basically about 2 or 3 feet deep. It's probably about 10, 15 feet wide, and people just can walk across it without barely getting wet. But one brother said, wow, it might not have been a miracle for them to get across a river like that, but it sure was a miracle for God to drown all of Pharaoh's army in a river like that. But when we get to there, we see that Jonathan had heard all of these stories about how God had moved in a mighty way. And he said, I don't have all of the baggage that my father does. So he could say, it might be that God can deliver by many or by few. That he can save by many or by few. And his armor bearer said unto him, do all that is within thine heart. Turn thee, behold, I am with thee according to thy heart. Then said Jonathan, behold, we will pass over unto these men, and we will discover ourselves unto them. If they say thus unto us, tarry until we come to you, then we will stand in our place, and we will not go up unto them. But if they say thus, come up unto us, then we will go up, for the Lord hath delivered them into our hand. And this shall be a sign unto us. And both of them discovered themselves into the garrison of the Philistines, and the Philistine says, behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes where they have hid themselves. And the men of the garrison answered Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, come up unto us, and we will show you the thing. And Jonathan said, unto his armor bearer, come up after me, for the Lord hath delivered them into the hand of Israel. And Jonathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet, and his armor bearer after him. And they fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer slew after him. And that first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor bearer made was about 20 men, within as it were a half acre of land, which a yoke of oxen might plow. And there was trembling in the host in the field among all the people, the garrison and the spoilers. They also trembled in the earthquake, so it was a very great trembling. The story goes on. The whole armies of the Philistines, all that whole garrison began to flee before 2 young people who decided that if God is on my side, that's all